Chapter 19. Dakota. Walking down the dim-lit corridor, Dakota crisscrossed through groups of young men and women, leaning against a wall that stretched to the sign in front of a unisex restroom. These men and women leaned their heads to the side where their veins were exposed, as their vampire patrons punctured into their veins with sharp incisors. At first the ones offering their necks appeared weak and wobbly, but then their eyes glossed over and they became erect and full of energy as they wandered off into back rooms. When Dakota finally reached the restroom and opened the door, it was full, and then she spotted a stall. She rushed into it, not caring why it was empty, and why no one had attempted to use it. She stood with her back to the door, and then there came a hard push, and she was face to face with Paige. Paige clearly had changed. Her beautiful round face and expressive eyes were blank. There wasn't any warmth in her, and no smile as she had been before. There wasn't anything that said Paige. Her hair looked and felt dead. No shine anywhere. Her cheeks had lost the rose of a young woman, and she looked dried up and much worse than Dakota had seen before. "What do you want?" Paige said in a cool voice. "Have you come to be changed tonight? Then you're out of luck. I'm full, and I don't need to feed tonight. Come back tomorrow night and I'll make your dreams come true," she said in a sing-song voice. "Paige? It's me. It's Dakota." Paige's face never changed from that hard, cold demeanor. Her eyes looked past Dakota and remained fixed as if she spotted something on the wall. Then she focused, staring at Dakota, as if she was trying to remember her eyes and the contour of her face. Paige's sleepy eyes went to Dakota's mouth and teeth. As Dakota spoke, Paige's eyes followed the expression on Dakota's face. Paige leaned her head to the left and to the right, and then she broke into a small smile. She placed her hand to Dakota's face, as if she were blind, tracing across her mouth. Dakota shivered inside, not wanting to show that she was afraid of Paige. Then Paige's face focused and her brow furrowed. "What are you doing here, Dakota?" "I came to find you. I needed to know if you were okay." "It is what it is. I'm a vampire now. That's my life." "But are you happy?" Dakota asked with a soft voice. She glanced around as if she thought the walls had ears, and they may have. "Dakota, leave now. I'll take you out. You don't have to be afraid. I won't let them have you." She grabbed Dakota by her hand and pulled Dakota out the stall, out of the bathroom, and then down a dark corridor. "Where are we going?" Dakota said, hesitant. "There's a back entrance. Only some of us know where it's located. We catch some of the unsuspecting humans who come here thinking it's just a club, and then they discover it's not a club but a slaughterhouse for some. Those are the ones who will become only food and be thrown away or incinerated in the basement." A chill rose on Dakota's neck to hear Paige talk so indifferent about people. Paige hurried Dakota on, and then there was a wall. She pushed the wall, and it opened to a parking lot. When she looked around, she didn't see Thomas or his car. It was almost impossible to tell where he was with the car lot full of cars. If she had his keys, she could hit a buzzer and find it. But she didn't think that far. "I don't know where my friend is. I won't be able to find him. His name is Thomas, you can't miss him. He's probably drunk out of his mind. I need you to get him, Paige. Do this for me." "Don't worry, I'll find him. Stay here." And Paige disappeared into the dark fog of the night. "Didn't I say to stay away from this, Dakota? Didn't I warn you to get far away from this? You have to leave now. If you have to walk, leave now." Dakota turned around, recognizing the voice, but not seeing anything. It was the thick fog. "Show yourself, Ashton. Are you too much of a coward to face me?" Ashton strode close until he stood with Dakota's face almost on his wide chest. Dakota whimpered at the sight of this beautiful man illuminated by the full moon. He stood with a black shirt and slacks and pale skin, making the clothes more pronounced and showing off his wide shoulders and slim waist and long legs. In the light, she noticed that a ring sparkled on his small finger. It was a large diamond, but it didn't look like a ring for a man, and she had never seen him adorn his body but for a few tattoos. He observed as she watched his finger, and he cupped his hand as if to hide the ring. Then, without saying a word, he reached for her and cradled her in his arms. "Put me down. My friend is in there. I have to find him before something happens to him." "I know," Ashton said as he strode to his waiting car, and Walker opened the door, and he placed Dakota in and climbed in after her. Turning to her, he said, "What possessed you to go to this club?" "I have been searching for my girlfriend Paige. I needed to know if she was alive or dead. And whether she was happy. I don't think she's happy. She works in that club changing humans to vampires. Can you help her, Ashton? If you love me, help her?" Dakota didn't expect him to answer that question, and she didn't expect the next question. "Do you love me? Will you marry me?" "How can you ask me that when you know what I saw? How can you be so cruel and think I'm so weak as to forget that you were sleeping with Elizabeth?" Ashton took Dakota's hand, and her weakness for him was undeniable. She felt the heat of her body, down to her needy clit. He was her weakness, and she knew it, but she didn't want him to know how much he affected her at this time. Did he say marry him? She would have said yes in a fast second if she hadn't seen him with Elizabeth, and they were naked and she was in handcuffs. He lowered his head, and then raised it quickly. "I am a vampire. I had a life before I met you. Many lives, and I have all this inside me that's swirling around, and I don't know how to contain it. You know nothing about a vampire's life." Ashton's voice mixed with anger, pain, and rage. His tone low. "Where are you going?" Dakota asked. "I'm taking you to my home." "I don't want to go to that apartment where you slept with Elizabeth. I have other homes." Dakota turned quickly to meet Ashton's sultry eyes. Her body quivered as his gaze met hers. He could do that to her, after all she knew and had seen. Dakota needed to find a way to break away and free herself of his hold over her. "I wasn't sleeping with her. Not like I was with you. I never touched her body the way I touched yours. I never entered her body the way I entered yours. That's supposed to make me feel better?" Dakota crossed her arms and barked at Ashton. "But you were with her. You enjoyed her body. What makes me different, that you can't enjoy me that way? If I had agreed to marry you, you would hunger for her body. One day you would hunger for what you missed with her. There was nothing that I wanted her for. We were thrown together by my brother. I suppose he made you take her into your bedroom the second time, or was it more than one time?" Ashton pulled Dakota's hands over to him. "Feel me. I'm warm because of you. You make me feel human. I want that. I need that. Give me that one more time and you won't regret it. I will be what you want as a husband. And I need something too. I need someone who will not be controlled by a foul, unfeeling woman. And because you have taken up with her when you had me, which makes you like her." Dakota turned her back to Ashton. "I'm not like her. I'm not like my brother. How can I prove that to you? Let me show you that part of me once more. The part you fell in love with. Let me start over with you. I want to know what it is that attracts you to her. It appears that not even your love for me and my love for you is enough to stop you from leaving me when she calls. If you aren't like her, you wouldn't have been with her. I wanted you to hunger for my body too. The way you wanted her." Dakota held her hands across her body and lowered her face. "You don't understand, Dakota." Ashton lifted her chin and turned her face to him. "I need you. You're all I have, and if you leave me, then I don't want to live." Ashton pulled Dakota into his arms. His arms hard and muscular, and she felt safe. More safe than she had ever felt in her life. Not even her father could protect her now. He had given her the misconception that nothing could happen to her as long as he was around, but that was an illusion. Perhaps Ashton was the only one who could protect her. But he was the only one who could hurt her, and he did, and now she felt hollow. I want to be with you forever. Ashton trailed his cool tongue across her moist lips, teasing them to open, and they did, and allowed him through. The kiss deep and fulfilling, as if it was a glass of water in the desert to Dakota. I want to marry you and live a life with you. Not with Elizabeth, who doesn't have any feelings. She once did, but no more. I'm an instrument to her, and she's just an instrument for me. An instrument to fuck, Dakota added and pulled away. She didn't like what she was hearing. I make love with you and to you, Ashton said, his voice low. Dakota shouted and pulled from his arms. I want to be fucked like you fucked Elizabeth. I want to know what she has over you, that you would turn away from our love. I want you, and I want you to teach me what it is that she gives you, so I can give it to you. You give me everything I need. Ashton moved closer to Dakota. He placed his hand to her face, and held her beautiful face in his large hands, looking into her cold eyes. Dakota was angry with him, and didn't realizing what she had said. He was on the precipice of losing her forever, and he had to do something or say something. He just didn't know how close he was to losing her to Ronan. Is that what you want? Ashton knew that wasn't what he wanted, or Dakota. Do you want me to show you what it is that I did with her? Only if you promise that you will not judge me for it. Ashton knew he was taking a gamble by showing Dakota the weakness he had fallen into. In Dakota's youthful mind, she was ever as capable of giving her man what he desired and needed from her. When the car pulled into the garage, Ronan had made up his mind to ask Dakota to marry him. The car parked into the stall next to a sports car. There were many cars in parking spaces, as there were empty spaces. Where are we now? I have a beachfront home, and you will like it. It faces to the east, and you will get the first rays of sunlight that comes into your room. I just purchased this house. I thought you would be happy here. Ashton opened the car door, stepped outside, and extended his hand. Dakota sat looking at Ashton, wondering if she wanted to do this. She hadn't forgiven him. It would take a lifetime to forgive his betrayal. But oh, how she loved that handsome vampire with a face like an angel. Reluctantly, she gave him her hand, and he took it and helped her from the limo. He walked up the stairs and through the doors. Dakota turned around. It was a 2-story home with a boat ramp out back, and near a small boat tied to the ramp. He walked her to the back where she could see the yacht in the middle of the ocean. Say the word and we can marry and sail around the world. It comes with a sailboat too. Of course it does. Dakota wasn't impressed. She didn't like water that much, and she wanted to continue her education. We can have our children with us when we sail around the world. Backing up and away from Ashton, Dakota raised her hand and said, Wait. Did I hear you say there would be children? Did I ever say that I wanted children? I said that I didn't think I wanted any. Vampires can't have children. Where did you hear that? Did you read that in a book? Ashton said with a smile, and moved closer to Dakota where she felt his penis swell and harden on her leg. What are you doing? You said you wanted to know what I wanted. I said that I wanted to know what you wanted from me in bed. Isn't that the same thing? You know it isn't. I want to know what kind of sex you desire. And are you willing to give me what I want? If you promise to never have another in your bed again. Teach me what it is that will made you stay away from me for so long. Dakota didn't know what she was asking of Ashton. It scared him to think about what it would take to fully satisfy him, now that he had tasted lust once more. Could he show her his inner soul, without Dakota hating him and leaving him? Chapter 20. Ashton. Ashton's eyes followed Dakota's beautiful, wide, innocent eyes and settled on her mouth. He needed to taste her luxurious, warm lips. He needed to feel her heated nipples and see them rise to hard pebbles in his mouth when his cold lips and breath first embraced them. The thoughts of her heated body pressed next to his left no room for reason. He wrapped her in his arms with her watching up at him in silence. He carried her through the hall, down 2 flights of stairs and into an elegant dim-lit room, with chandeliers where the walls were padded with black satin. There were no curtains for the windows, because there were no windows. It was like another world under the exquisite home. Ashton strode to the enormous bed, and placed her gently on it. He toed off the right shoe and then the left one. She watched him tear off his shirt, and drop everything in a pile at his feet. His shoulders wide, hard and pale. He leaned over her, and with one hand he effortlessly ripped her clothes from her body, and lay her across the bed. "Oh," Dakota gasped. The astonishment of Ashton's quick action brought her eyes down. In the darkness, too difficult to see herself or Ashton, but Ashton could see her. She reached her hands down to cover her pubic hair, but her breasts were exposed. Hard, plump breasts. Ashton's mouth salivated and his cock pulsed. The darkness added to the excitement Dakota experienced, which had her heart beating quickly. Ashton heard it drumming in her chest as he lay over her. And he listened to the pulsing of her blood flooding through her heart. Ashton leaned and looked at her jugular. All he had to do was to kiss her there. Plunge his incisors into her wonderful veins, and he would have the blood he needed. He would have Dakota the way he wanted her, at this moment. On her knees, her back to him and ravishing her night and day. But that was his impure vampire desire raging, and he had in store for Dakota wasn't love, but lust. Yet even before him was the woman he adored, but he couldn't rid himself of the lust that had come to him lately. That hunger for blood had been too intense. How could he not take the chance to satisfy his thirst? But he knew that once he decided, he couldn't go back this time. He would have taken Dakota with him. It wouldn't be too bad, he thought. He would have the woman he loved for all eternity. He would have her sexually the way he desired, and she would be able to give him the orgasms he had enjoyed before. But he would never be able to have children with her, and that's what horrified him the most. And he didn't know if that was what she wanted, to be like him and never have his children. Ashton thought of an alternative, and dragged himself from the temptation of her blood, when every instinct within him drew him to her smell and pulled him to the thumping in her neck. All he had to do was just puncture it slightly, and he could smell and taste it. But Ashton knew the problem of doing that. Perhaps he couldn't control himself. A sad look crept over his face. His mouth turned and he moaned. Then his head slumped down to her breasts. His lips caressed them, but his thoughts were still absorbed with what if. What if he bit her and broke the skin? Could he control himself and not go overboard? While looking into her eyes, a rage and unsatisfied urge came over him, and he narrowed his eyes. "Ashton, why are you looking at me like that?" He didn't hear Dakota when he sucked her breasts and nipped her nipples. He had been too long not being himself. With Elizabeth, he could be what he was. A monster, and now he had to harness all that rage and sexual urges with the one woman he wanted to share his life with. Could he become what she wanted him to be? Dakota closed her eyes, waiting for the compelling and satisfying warm sexual experience Ashton had given her on their first encounter. When she was a virgin, and when she fell in love with the first man to touch her. But Ashton's mind had been confused, and his body was all out of sync. The time with Elizabeth had him desiring that which he had put away a long time ago. Suddenly he shot up in bed. "This is who I am," he said, his mouth curving downward. His eyes were staring not at Dakota but somewhere beyond her. A surprised Dakota didn't know this man, who one minute was kissing her tenderly on her lips, and sucking her nipples, and kissing her body all over and admiring her as if she was a goddess. "You frighten me, Ashton." And Dakota tried moving, but it was too late. He outstretched his arms and held down her arms as he forced her lips open. The thunder of his tongue sliced through her as his legs opened hers, and without notice, he had pushed the head of his powerful penis in her genital opening. The rest too hard and too explosive to fit. When he reached a climax with one surge inside of her opening, he didn't move but propped himself over her. Is that what you want? This is me. This is what I am. I have an insatiable need to have sex. I had been trying to curtail it all these years without a woman. And it came back violent like cancer. Is this what you want from me? I have to let you go. I love you and want you, but I am a danger to you. And you don't know all of it. This is only a glimpse into my corrupted soul. Instead of Dakota despising Ashton, she relaxed and lifted her head and kissed Ashton. It was a heated kiss, and he felt his cock hardening, and this time he couldn't control it. He didn't want to control it. He felt her body give in to him, and he slid his long length further inside her until it could go no further. She raised her hips to him and met his as she kissed him violently, and with a moan she had reached an orgasm. His penetrating cock was what she needed. He had been born for her and she for him. Take it out, Dakota whispered. Ashton looked down at her, as if she had been displeased with him. He pulled out of her, and lay on his side, reaching for the towel that lay on the table next to the bed. He wiped himself but still remained hard. Dakota turned to him with a chuckle. You still have a hard-on. I told you. That's my affliction. I'm never soft. But I used to be able to control myself, but I don't know how anymore. There is only one way to do that, and that is to satisfy your urge. Dakota eased down beside him and crossed over between his legs. What are you doing, Dakota? Leaning up and looking into his eyes, she said, I'm going to give you a blowjob. He grabbed her by the arms, lifting her. No, you're not. What's the matter? Do you think I can't do that? I'm too good, and you want Elizabeth to give you what you craved. She shouldn't have said that. She knew it was wrong when it fell from her mouth. Dakota had a bad habit of saying what was on her mind, and now she had inadvertently reminded Ashton of what Elizabeth had brought to him. A chance to enjoy the sex-starved vampire in him. Starved for blood and starved for the vile sex he had forgotten about and now craved. When she noticed Ashton's body tightened at her words and his eyes close, she placed her mouth on his penis. Without a word, he held her head down and pushed his cock into her mouth as far as it would go. She tried to raise up because she didn't know how to open her throat like Elizabeth and swallow it, and she pawed and scratched at Ashton, but he wouldn't budge. But something made him release her head, and as she lifted it, she discovered his cum flowing out of her mouth. She fell to the side, and Ashton reached for her and wiped her face. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I warned you that I couldn't control myself. Leave me alone. I never want to see you again. When Dakota rushed to the door, Ashton stood to face her. You can't leave me. You are my only hope. I love you and I need you. With you, I can learn to be human again. Get out of my way. You aren't human, and you never will be, and nothing I will do will bring that about. A sad, dejected look crossed Ashton's face, and he gazed past Dakota as if she had put a stake into his heart. He moved to the side of the double doors, and she opened them. A flare of light hit Dakota when she walked into the corridor, which had windows. It was morning, and the sun rose slowly on the horizon. She watched Ashton's painful blank face and steam rise from his body. Go back into your room, she barked. What for? I don't have you. I should just end it now. Go back inside. I'll be waiting for you when the night comes. She lied. Ashton turned and stepped inside his protected room and closed the door.